Well, hi there, Tech fans. I'm Will Sturt, Tech Sideline founder. And what a great weekend in Blacksburg for Virginia Tech softball and baseball. That's what we're going to talk about on today's TSL podcast, episode 239. We're going to start with softball and their fantastic, dramatic regional win. And then in the second half of the show, we're going to talk about baseball being the #1 seed in the ACC Championship coming up. And I have with us a very special guest, somebody you'll probably recognize. And that's all coming up on episode 239 of the Tech Sideline podcast, which starts right now. Alrighty, welcome back in. Some episodes of the TSL podcast are a lot of fun to do, and this is going to be one of them for a couple of reasons. It's always fun to do a TSL podcast after lots of wins, and it's always cool to have a very special guest. So, without further ado, Malcolm, let's cut to the guy across from me, sitting in his old host chair. Ladies and gentlemen, Evan Hughes, the man who helped make the Tech Sideline podcast what it is today. Evan, how you doing?
I'm great. It is, first of all, it's great to be back with you guys. It was fun to sit and watch the regionals this weekend with you guys.
Yeah.
And it's amazing to see the changes. First of all, these new microphones, the new additions. The Hokies are sharp, dadgummit. That's my favorite thing we've got up here, and I'm glad it's still here. So Thanks for having me back, though. Seriously, it's going to be a fun. I mean, we've got a lot to talk about today.
Yeah, so we're going to grill you in a second about, what you've been up to since graduating and all that. First, let's say who else is up here on set. Over in the red shirt chair, we've got Tech Sideline managing editor and continual TV star, David Cunningham.
I just know how to get on TV, man.
Really,
if you want to get on TV, you need to hang out near me.
Just hang out with David Cunningham. And over there in the fourth chair today is Tech Sideline lead analyst Chris Coleman. Chris, this is the first podcast since you got back, right?
Yep.
Yeah, so that's Chris was over in England for 10 days, couple of weeks.
Oh, a week.
Yeah,
not long enough.
Got to see 2 Tottenham wins and 2 Arsenal losses.
No, well, exactly.
I'm happier. I'm happy for you about the wins, but I'm happier about the losses for Arsenal.
No, I hear you. Tottenham's never lost a game that I've been at, and whenever I leave, Virginia Tech always gets all these commitments, right? So I feel like between the Tottenham fan base and the Virginia Tech fan base, we should be able to pool enough money together to move me to London.
There you go.
And I think it could be to the benefit of both teams.
I think with the exception of the Tech Sideline podcast, you could work remotely.
Oh, sure. No doubt.
Yeah. And it'd be good for tech recruiting and good for time. Yeah. All right, so fair warning, I went to bed at 1 o'clock last night. I was working on an article before I went to bed. I worked on I had a doctor's appointment this morning, which was scheduled weeks ago before I knew what an awesome morning this would be. And then finished up my article. So that's my, I always like to apologize for how poorly I do hosting the show. So that's my way of setting the table for I'm not really prepared here. Fortunately, I'm with guys who know baseball and softball and, we'll be able to wing this thing. So Evan, let's start with you. Graduated Tech last year. Tell us what you've been up to. I mean, most people know, but for those who haven't seen you or heard you since you exited as a Tech Sideline podcast host, what's going on?
It's been a really fun year. Kind of hard to believe. I got the Facebook memory a couple of days ago that you graduated a year ago, and I'm like, wow, that's hard to believe. It's been a fast year. No, I've been. Life has been really good.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed being the assistant director of broadcast services over Virginia Tech Sports Properties. What a fun year for me to get to come into and be the voice of Tech women's basketball and baseball, and the incredible year that women's basketball had a program record 13 ACC wins, Shepard the all-time leading scorer, Kitley the ACC Player of the Year. Yeah. That incredible win will go down as one of my favorite games I've ever called in my life in North Carolina in the quarterfinal, and the Amore and one, and then the overtime, the thriller that was.
So I was actually sitting in the drive-through line at Arby's when you were calling that game.
Really?
That was fantastic to listen to.
I was like 5 seats down from him on press row.
Yeah, that's right.
It was a ton of fun. And then getting to work with our baseball team, it's been incredible. I mean, the run that they have been on right now. I mean, they have been, I think, one of the stories in college baseball this year. And I think the best part for me, most rewarding, is the people that I get to go into work with every day. I cannot begin to tell Hokie Nation enough just how good of people Kenny Brooks and John Sheff are. Just two tremendous Hokies that love their jobs. They've got great staffs, really great people in the program. So calling those games and then staying busy in the podcast realm as well, hosting the Hokie Sports Insider podcast that we launched this year that kind of covers the Olympic sports. And there's just so many great stories that these athletes have at Tech, right? Whether it's like men's soccer and a couple of players that are from across the pond, like Chris Coleman was last week, and telling their story or whatever that may be. It's one of the bummers of broadcasting, right? Sometimes you prep for these great stories, and then the game's so good and you don't get to share them.
Right.
So having a podcast to be able to have these student athletes, these coaches come on and talk, it's been a great year. It's been rewarding, and we're not done yet, as we're going to talk about. Still a lot more baseball left to be played this year. So
have they drafted you into sponsorship sales yet? Are you doing that part of the business?
I love working with our sponsors, and we've had a lot of them on, especially as of late, the baseball broadcast, and women's basketball as well, having them on during halftime. And
so you go all NASCAR, right, and start talking about the sponsors?
No, I mean, it's really fun though, because they all love Virginia Tech, and it's great when they get to go and have their clients and their team get to come and have a day at Castle or English Field, and then they get to share their product. And it's been really rewarding learning more about them. A couple of them have actually thrown out first pitches as of late at English Field, and I'm going to drop the name of the golf professional at Blacksburg Country Club. But let me tell you, threw an unbelievable strike right down the middle.
Yeah.
Very, very impressed. That's not easy to do. I'm telling you, when you go to the rubber, it's not easy.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to try that.
I saw someone in a major league game throw one into the crowd recently, over the protective
Just a bit
netting.
outside.
Well, I swear when people do that, they do it on purpose.
Evan, I assume you don't want me to bring up the first pitch. So I went up and visited St. Cloud with Evan last year, and they let Evan Hughes throw out the first pitch. He was the voice of the Rocks for a couple of years. It was a little high. I'll say that. But to his point, it's kind of hard to throw out a first pitch sometimes.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but I go back. We've got our managers still managing the team. I know a couple of the players. I'd never played baseball. I not an inning, not
Really?
Little League, not T-ball. I never played baseball growing up. And so our manager's like, you going to go stand in front of the mound? I was like, absolutely not. I'm going to go to the rubber. And there were about 1,000 people out there. And so they call my name, and I'm waving, and I get out to the rubber. And in my head, I'm like, oh my God. I said, I cannot be Carly Rae Jepsen. I cannot be 50 Cent.
Can't be Riley Wyatt.
So I just said, I'm going to release high. And so I swear to you, the video, the ball was so high out of frame, and then it drops back down. And so I would rather be that guy than someone who spikes it, and it takes a couple of hops to home plate.
So I've never been on a pitcher's mound. Are they very high up?
Oh, it's high. Absolutely. Yeah. No, it's no messing around there. You gotta. So, anyways, I now have a deeper appreciation for people who come in a first pitch and throw one right down the middle.
So it's interesting being with you this weekend. We sat in the outfield seats for 2 or 3 games. I lose track of stuff, but it's interesting walking around with you. I'm used to being accosted while we walk around, especially if you're wearing the brand. And people left us alone, and they're great. Are you Evan Hughes?
Oh.
Hey, are you Evan Hughes?
After the game, we're walking back to our cars, and this guy comes up to Evan Hughes in lot 2 and says, "Hey, Evan, I love you, man." Dead serious. Evan's going to be having his own NIL gear pretty soon.
Well, and that's another part too. I feel really lucky that I get to spend 3 years being the podcast host here, right? And getting to know the wonderful people on the message boards and, kind of getting to develop that relationship through TSL, but then now even more so through this. I mean, the amount of people, that came up to me early on, like, Evan, love the TSL pod, man. I mean, I still get that. And I love the great success that you guys are continuing to have with this podcast and the job that Jake and Katie and so many others have done. But it's one of the best parts of my job. I love getting to talk to people, like meeting Hokies, wherever you're from. It's a special place when you're in Blacksburg and people feel like they're at home here. And so to be somebody that can try and give a piece of home from afar, doing broadcast and doing podcasting and trying to make people feel back at home, I take a lot of pride in doing that for our the best fan base in the country. No doubt about that.
Oh man, and back in the day, like Bill Roth resonates with people because back before television was so prominent, a lot of people, that was the only connection they had to the game was Bill Roth calling it on the radio. So Let's continue to wear this topic out. I wanted to read a couple of tweets to you. So we announced that you were going to be on today on our Twitter, and there are two responses, and I found this interesting. One of them says, it's from Stephanie Gomez Wilson, who says, "It was interesting to watch the ACCNX stream, which used Evan's radio call for audio. You could see in real time how well he paints the picture for listeners. Fantastic job."
Oh, wow.
And
Thank you.
The next tweet is Jeffrey. He says, "Evan is doing a fantastic job painting pictures for the listeners / viewers."
There you go.
Your regular Bob Ross over there, right?
Well, I appreciate that because I recognize I still have a long ways to go, but that's my goal. If you listen to our broadcast, I want you to know exactly what's going on. As a listener, I want to know, is the defense in a shift? What's the wind doing? I honestly sometimes try and close my eyes and just think, like, what does a listener need to know? Is a ball chopped to third? Is it, every little detail
It does.
I feel like you've got to bring. And so, but I will say, as of late, the details for Tech baseball have been swung on and clobbered, hammered, destroyed.
A lot of it with Carson Jones.
A lot
with
with
his name on
ACC
it.
Co-Player of the Week. I mean, they just keep hitting home runs.
My
So-
favorite text message of the week was Chris Coleman texting, "Who the hell is Carson Jones?" He'd been out of the country for 2 weeks, and this phenomenon had just appeared.
Yeah, and of course, Evan's on the air and literally texted back within like 5 minutes.
Yeah, I know.
I did.
Evan's just like, yeah, he's like, this is only like his fourth start of the season.
Well, I forgot it. He started 14 games last year.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Listen, when Chris Coleman texts you, you find a way to respond, all right?
I was like, "Evan, aren't you in the middle of calling again?"
I was in a commercial break, but yes.
All right, so let's get to softball.
Yeah.
The first thing I wanted to talk about is, we were all there. Chris was there for the St. Francis game. We were all there for a lot of games this weekend. I thought that the production by Virginia Tech Athletics was top notch. I thought the way that they handled things was well done. Now, admittedly, it's easier to do things for a crowd of 2,000 than it is for a huge mob. But we've got a Monday Thoughts that I put together that we're going to run later today, and I said, you're talking about a sport, Tech softball, that doesn't charge admission.
Yeah.
That park is not gated off. People just walk in and sit down. But this is a regional. They had to charge. There were some reserve seats. There were some general admission seats. And I thought altogether they did a great job of traffic flow, food, drinks, even, I'm not going to call them bathrooms. They were porta potties. So, what'd you guys think?
I thought they were pretty good. I mean, first of all, they had Beamer Way blocked off. So, and there were food trucks out there. And I did not try the food truck, but I know you did. I believe.
I did.
They smelled good. They looked pretty good. But I will say, it's interesting because, and I'm sure Evan feels the same way a little bit because he doesn't have as many opportunities to be as a fan as I
Right.
do. We're both kind of in that same media boat where we're rarely out in the stands. And so like between going, I caught baseball on Tuesday and then we caught a little bit of baseball on Saturday with the rain, but softball too, all the prices are, fan friendly, which is really helpful. You can go up and get a hot dog for $2.50. Like that's a deal,
Wow.
And I thought, of course, they brought in 2 bleachers, held about 1,000 fans, so the capacity was about 2,000. But I thought just in general, like it was very well run. And you tweeted out, you quote tweeted the Kentucky head coach's Rachel Lawson, her comments on it, and she praised it as well. And I think overall it's a good venue already. It could use a little bit of renovation, obviously, but yeah, I mean, I thought the crowds were really good, and I don't think like anybody really had any problems.
I didn't hear or read a single complaint.
I was blown away, and I think it starts at the top with Chris Helms, who did a terrific job as the tournament director, all the way down to the ushers that were bringing everybody in, to the different food vendors that were there. I thought it was an incredibly well-run event. So a hat tip to everybody here at Virginia Tech that I have the pleasure of working with, and it was super fun and unique. Like you'll always remember that first softball regional, right? That 08 team that made it to the Women's College World Series was a 1 seed, but they couldn't host it at the time, so you had to go to Tennessee. But I thought, again, the fan base was off the charts. And what I was really curious to go back afterwards was to go watch the home runs. and see how did it sound over the broadcast. And you could tell, like, we thought it was loud in person, and it really resonated well, I thought, on replay. I just think whether it was over 1,000 fans being in the stands until 1 a.m. on Sunday, whether it was the baking sun. I will not show my sunburn, but I got a huge.
Yeah.
I mean, the fans, and I tell you what, another thing too, I should have let off with this. Lot 2 for parking. When I made the left onto Beamer Way to go to the St. Francis game before baseball on Friday, the tailgating. I mean, lot 2, lot 3. I mean, there was legit tailgating going on, and the vibes. It was a 10 out of 10. It really was.
Yeah, the fans showed out for real. And I will say one last thing: they need to keep those bleachers out in left field because those bleachers, that seat. It's such. I mean, we all sat there for both the games yesterday. I love watching that game from that angle.
I want to point out also that it was tough for Virginia Tech during football season to find people to work games.
Yeah.
And they had to bus people from out of town and pay them $20 an hour because there's not enough people in this area right now that want to work jobs like that. Like even some of the bars in Blacksburg have different schedules these days.
Restaurants.
Right, because there's not enough work. Not enough people in the workforce right now. So to put on an event of that magnitude, having never done it at Tech Softball Park before, was very impressive, I thought.
Yeah, and so the tailgating you were seeing, that's the players' families primarily along Beamer Way. But so I wanted to say that, and we'll get to this, the first super regional games at 2:00 on Friday.
Yes.
So
ESPN
get out there at like 11, and I mean, it takes people a second to realize, oh, you can tailgate for something like that. So definitely recommend it. So that covers the first thing I'm going to do, which is a great show by Virginia Tech Athletics. And so let's go through. Clearly, the championship game is one to talk about, but let's quickly go through some of the other games.
Sure.
And so, Virginia Tech starts off with a 4-0 victory over St. Francis on Friday. Keeley flirts with a perfect game, then has to settle, in air quotes, for a no-hitter. Clearly Keeley had a great performance, but I remember coming away from that game just thinking, man, the bats have got to come around. And this was continuing a not great hitting performance from the ACC tournament, maybe even a game or two before that. So while we were pleased with what happened with Keeley in the circle, I was still concerned about the bats after the St. Francis game.
Yeah, no, and I thought that they got the timely hitting that they needed in that first game. But I go back to something that Coach DeMore said. I don't know if it was in a press conference leading up or a chat that I had with him on Hokie Sports Insider last week. But he was saying that in batting practice, they hit the ball so hard, right? And there's not a lot that you can change because in practice, they're fantastic. And just sometimes you're facing really good pitching. I mean, I know some might see the name St. Francis, but that's a conference champion.
And their starter was pretty good.
They absolutely. No, I thought good Vila. So, the phrase is survive in advance, right? You take whatever win that you can possibly get. But as we'll talk about, I mean, the bats really did start to come along as the weekend went along.
Yeah, and worth pointing out is that, sure, they only scored 4 runs, but that included 2 outs, two runners thrown out at the plate, or one of them wasn't at the plate. It was a rundown between home and third. And if you kind of and we were in the stands talking about this, the runner that was thrown out at the plate, you have to make St. Francis make that throw.
No question.
Try him.
It was their left fielder that caught it, shallow left field, but I mean, why not try it?
Yeah.
And it was Bree Peck, and I mean, Tech ended up putting up enough runs to win. And you got Keely Richard on the mound, threw a no hitter. I mean, that was a pretty good start to the tournament.
Wow, I just realized in my article I was talking about Keeley's pitch count, and I totally left out the St. Francis game. Yikes. So I've got to go back and do a rework on that.
I didn't think that 77 pitches.
You're like, that's
right.
awfully
I'm
low.
Like, that's pretty low.
Yeah. See, so in my mind, I locked into like everything that happened from the first Kentucky game on. I totally dismissed the St. Francis game. So that's going to require a little rewrite before we publish. So let's talk about the next day, Kentucky and Virginia Tech, with Virginia Tech as the home team.
Yeah.
And that game was originally scheduled to go off at 3. Rain delay got pushed out to 5. And I felt like, and I'll put this in today's article, there was a critical at-bat early on where Emma Lemley got into it with, I don't remember who the batter was. It was a 12-pitch at-bat. I think there was 1 out and somebody on, if I remember correctly. And I talked to you guys and I said, this is a critical at bat. She needs to set the tone here. And she eventually got the pop up. So Lemley gets out of that, first half inning good. And then Tech comes in and I don't know, what is it? Single, walk, boom, grand slam.
Meredith Law, grand slam.
Yeah. And so I'm feeling pretty good at that point. Yeah.
4-0 after one.
Yeah. And then it kind of started to crawl after that. And for me, the nerves set in. So what do you guys recall about those middle innings?
I will say the one game that I did miss, Tech baseball was going on, so I missed the majority of that game. I saw the bottom half of the 7th inning to end it. But I will say this, that I read somewhere that Coach Lawson of Kentucky, apparently they didn't play a lot before the NCAA tournament.
Yeah, they had like two games in 2 weeks or something like that.
Yep, and she said somewhere that they had been preparing for Virginia Tech, that they felt confident that the committee was going to put them in the Blacksburg Regional. Remember, in 2019, Tech in Pete DeMoore's first year went to the Lexington Regional, lost to Kentucky in a regional championship in 19, and then they played earlier this year. So she said that they had been preparing for weeks, I'm sure, to see Keeley again and this team. And so I thought that was just one storyline that was interesting, kind of down the stretch when Keeley came in that first game. I mean, you could tell they've seen her for multiple years, right? I mean, this isn't a true SEC, ACC where you don't see each other until a postseason.
Yeah, and so going into the weekend, one of the questions was, are they going to start Emma against St. Francis and throw Keeley against Kentucky in the first game? And he did it the other way around. And I believe if you go run the numbers, Emma gave up 4 runs in 13 innings, which is pretty darn good.
Yeah.
And so Kentucky pitches by committee.
Yes, Kentucky essentially has like 6 or 7 girls, and I think they only threw about 4 or 5. But as they got more into Sunday, Tech started shelling some of their, as the bats started to get hot.
And they're quick to make a change.
Kentucky started shelling some of their other pitchers, and so, but the girls that threw on Saturday, Tech struggled a little bit, and that's what I was going to get into, because what I remember is Tech had that great first inning where, and I told you, I said, okay, Emma Lemley has a 4-run lead. She gets to manage for the rest of the game. That is a great start. Yeah. First inning, 4-run lead. You got 6 innings. You either can put a little bit more runs on the board, but you've also got 4 runs to work with. Tech had 1 hit in the second and then didn't have another hit until the 6th.
Well, if I remember correctly, Kentucky changed pitchers after that 4-0 start. They didn't mess around.
Yeah, and they went to the girl that ended up, I think she started in the game the first game on Sunday.
Right, and didn't do as well, but she pitched.
But she pitched very well on Saturday, and Tech just couldn't really hit her. Yeah. And it was kind of a stalemate a little bit. Kentucky had a couple innings where they got runners on base, but just couldn't really do anything. And Emma Lemley, you got to give her credit. I mean, she weathered the storm, kind of corralled them and didn't let them do anything. But it got to the point where it was kind of just like, Tech might have to put up another run or two to win this game.
Well, if I remember correctly, it was 4-1, and you go into the top of the 7th, and Kentucky gets an infield single, one of those choppers that we talk about how many infield hits there are in softball. Mm-hmm. Because if you hit the ball and it's not a real strong hit and you're a fast runner, or if you hit a chopper and you're a fast runner, they can make the play cleanly and you can still get on. So that happened.
So she singled, so they singled the second, and that was with Lemley on the mound still. And then they subbed in Keeley, and then it was a single to short, the top of the lineup. That was Kowalik.
And it was also another chopper.
And
so suddenly you got the first 2 batters on, and you've got the tying run coming to the plate, but it got worse than that.
Yeah, well, and so Keeley struck out 1, and then this is the 3-batter that came up and singled the left, and they scored a run. So that was 4-2, and they still got 2 on, and the winning run comes to the plate.
Right.
And then this was Renee Abernathy. Yep. She homered to right and scored 2 other runs. So they scored 3 runs, so then they went up 5-4. And at that point, you're just sitting there going, oh, my.
Oh, man, that was a gut punch. Yeah. And so Keeley got the next 2 batters out. Tech came in and did get the tying run to second, but couldn't bring it across.
Yeah.
And everybody said the right thing after the game. Well, we'll just have to win tonight and keep playing, and anything can happen. But actually being, talking to Chip Grubb, and Chip spends a lot of time with the players' families. They knew what they were up against.
Yeah.
Chip talked about on the podcast about how you really need to win that winner's bracket game at 3:00 on Saturday, which turned out to be 5:00 on Saturday. Right. He said, or you're in for a long night. Yeah. So
that it was.
Yes, indeed. So the game's over at 7:30 or something like that. And then Tech has to watch St. Francis and Miami of Ohio play. And then Tech has to play again, and it's 10:40 at night.
Yeah, it started at 10:40.
And I will point out, this is not a typical May day. It was roasting out there. So that saps even more energy out of you. And so then it got interesting. One of the things I'll talk about in my article is all the decisions Pete Demore made over the weekend that were, from us outsiders looking in, you're like, why are you doing that? That's risky.
I assume you're talking a lot about pitching.
Mostly pitching, yes.
Because I assume you're going to get
because
I assume you're going to get into Miami,
right? So Miami they go to play Miami, and he starts Ivy Rosenberg.
Yeah.
And she wound up pitching a couple innings, giving up a total of 4 runs. There were 4 runs attributed to her.
Yeah.
Brings in Mackenzie Osborne to take care of that, and then you bring in Keeley in the 4th inning, and I'm trying to remember the exact sequence of things. Let's cut to the chase. Tech got down 4-1, and it got a little shaky. And then they got a 2-run homer from Jamie Bailey. And so in studying the weekend, everybody remembers Mackenzie Lauder's 2 home runs, a 2-run homer and a 3-run homer, both of them game winners against Miami of Ohio and Kentucky. And then Jamie had a 2-run homer against Miami that took it from 4-1 to 4-3.
Yeah.
And then when
Lauder
Tech got down and Lauder had the game winner later. Then when Tech got down 2-0 against Kentucky in the championship game, it was Jamie that had the 2-run. You are talking about, in terms of batting average, 2 of the, in air quotes, worst hitters on the team. Their batting averages are something like 271 and 252 going into the weekend, and they came through big time.
They did. And by the way, Chris Coleman knows. Well, Atlanta Braves, they've got a 270 average. You'll take that, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
it's different for baseball.
A little bit different.
Still a really good average. And those are 2 really, really marquee players on this team. But I think that is one player that might get forgotten about a little bit. I'm glad you brought it up, is Jamie Bailey. Because when you're down 4-1, I mean, Miami, Ohio, that's, Corinne Kumar, the head coach, a former Pete Demore assistant at Virginia Tech, right? Somebody who knows Keeley, Mac, this team backwards and forward, playing with the lead. Their fans were into, all the momentum was on that side. Bailey was the one who kind of breathed new life into the game, I thought.
And
you get down the run. So again, for her to hit that 2-run homer, and then in the championship game, which I don't want to get too far ahead, but you go down 2-0. And then Bailey comes right back, ties the game at 2. That was a huge kind of in a boxing match punch thrown to go back on the offense, it felt like.
And I think one of the plays, it's tough because I don't think anybody's going to be able to top Emma Ritter's defensive play. Yeah. But Jamie Bailey might have had the second best defensive play of the weekend. 7th inning, Game 7 against Kentucky. Ball goes to her, and she fields it, and then has to dive and touch the bag. And
I don't think that was the 7th inning, though.
I think it was a little bit earlier.
I think it was 5th or 6th. Sorry,
but still, it was a big play.
That was, I believe that was a 5th inning. If I think about it, first out of the 5th inning, and I think that might have been Kowalik. It was the top of the order, and she just jumps and tags the bag, and it's kind of like, oh my God,
Have you watched the video of that?
No, I have
She
not.
gets up pretty gingerly. She laid out and landed flat.
But those are the plays you have to win. So she did it on the offensive end twice, and then she made a couple really important defensive plays too.
So real quick, going back to Miami, which I'm sure wrapping up that game real quick though. You ever been somewhere before and you're just lost in the moment, right? And maybe it's a sporting event, maybe it's something else, and you look at your watch or your phone and you go, oh my God, it's 12:30 in the morning, or the day has gotten way away
you're
from
in
you.
The bar when you.
But seriously, that game ended at 1:04. There were over 1,000 fans there till the end, and the reason I bring that up is you get done with the game at 1 a.m. And just even, I feel like for everybody in the stands, the adrenaline was pumping so much. Like, it was, let's play another one where obviously the team knew they needed to go get some rest. And I think Pete DeMoore had the shortest press conference in the history of press conferences after that one. But
so they got to do post-game media.
Yeah, apparently he literally said, like, let's go play tomorrow. And that was it.
Yeah. And that's fine, you know.
At 1:30, I'm giving him a hard time. But
but like, that's how late and Evan and I were sitting next to each other. That was the one game that you did not go to.
Right.
But we're sitting there, and I think for a little bit, Evan and I were kind of looking at each other going, like, Tech's down, and then Jamie Bailey comes up with a big, all right, things are starting to go. And then Mackenzie Lauder goes yard, and it was just like, all right, Tech's got it. Because then that was when Mackenzie Osborne had just come in the half inning before, and then they put Keeley in, and then they cruised for the rest of the
Mackenzie
game.
Osborne threw 9 pitches and is the winning pitcher of record for that game. She got the win.
And I want to point out, too, that I think Coach talked to Chip afterwards for you guys.
Yeah.
And he said that having Ivy and Mac pitch half of that game was very important for the rest of Emma and Keeley for at least a half game for Sunday's doubleheader.
Yeah. I said Pete made a lot of what looked like risky decisions, but in retrospect, he looks like the puppet master, just perfectly, playing things out.
Yeah, they so Ivy threw 43 pitches, and Mackenzie Osborne threw 9.
And Keeley threw how many? 40?
She threw 54 that day.
Okay.
But you have to think, that's what, 54 pitches. So they both threw 54 pitches. That's 54 pitches that Emma Lemley and Keeley Rochard did not have to throw.
Yes.
That's important.
So game's over at 1:05. They do a real quick media. Then they got to travel to the hotel room. Then they got to shower. I hope they showered and go to bed. So they're in bed. I think I asked Chip, and Chip said they were in bed at like 2:30. Not that he's there tucking them in. He asked the next day. Chip's got a great relationship with the team, but So they go to bed at like 2:30 and talked to Chip this morning, and Coach DeMoore gave them the option to sleep in. Because the game the next day was scheduled for noon, is that correct?
Yeah.
Right. So he gave them the option to sleep in, and the team told him, no, let's get up and go at the regular time and get fielding practice and BP. And I went to bed Saturday night not feeling optimistic, but then I woke up Sunday. I'm 57, and I'm like, you know what? I feel pretty good today. These are young kids. They're like 18 to 22 years old. They can do this, particularly with the pitching they've got. So
I had the same thought. I really did. when this team lost to Kentucky, they're so good that you knew that they could win 3 in a row. And I kept saying it. This is not like I'm the first person who invented this saying, but as those of you watching and listening probably know, it's no different. And I'll go back to Chris and his Braves. I don't remember what the World Series was last year, but when you're up, let's just say 3-2 in a series, CC, and you win that when you're trailing 3-2, and you win that game, who's the pressure on the next game?
Oh, it's all on them.
On the other team.
And so you just got that feeling. If Tech can get that one against Kentucky, then you're the home team again. You're in your home dugout. You've got the fans. You've got the momentum.
Yeah.
And they took care of business in a big way in that game one, and it just set up for what was a thrilling final game.
That was the only game in the whole weekend that I would say was really easy. Even the St. Francis game, I know it was a no-hitter, but Tech didn't score those last 2 or 3 runs until later in the game.
And it was great to see the bats, the home runs. I thought Tech was hitting the ball really hard. And I think another thing from that first game, Will, is that, and I know that Kentucky pitches by committee, but they decided, I think they used, 6 pitchers in that first game?
They used 5 pitchers and threw 148 pitches total.
So I think one thing that was important for Tech is they saw all 5 of the arms in game 1, right?
Because we're sitting out there in the outfield going, oh, she throws a lot of changeups, watching the different pitchers and how they pitch and getting used to their motion because they all have different pre-pitch things that they go through, and you're right. If you can kind of see all of them for a few pitches.
Well, and imagine if you only saw 3, right? And then Kentucky brings in 2 in that second game, and there's that adjustment period where as a hitter, you're seeing that arm for the first time through. Yeah. I thought that was an underrated part, is that when you see all the arms that you could possibly see No different than Kentucky seeing Lemley and Rochard earlier in the weekend. But at that point, you're a hitter. You know exactly how to approach this pitcher going into a winner-take-all game.
Yeah, the girl that Kentucky threw last on Sunday, the 7th game, she threw 2 innings. It was Miranda Stoddard. She was the only one that had not pitched against Tech that weekend. But I believe she had pitched. I think she pitched against Tech early in the season. So to your point, Tech had already played them in February, but Tech, the comfortable level of comfortability, they were. Virginia Tech's like, okay, we've seen all these pitchers, and it wasn't like Kentucky's just like, okay, let's change pitchers because we want to. It's like Virginia Tech's putting pressure on them to make them change pitchers. And we had talked about it all weekend long. Where's run support going to come from?
Yeah.
When is it going to come? And we were like, we need to, you need the top of the order to get some hits. Well, Cameron Fagan goes 3 for 5. Or Emma Ritter goes 3 for 5. Cameron Fagan has a 3-run home run. Tech won 9-2. And I think that was, like you mentioned, that was the turning point where it was like, all right, Tech has all the momentum. Tech finally got some run support. And now it's like you go into Game 7 where you just beat them by 7 runs and you're feeling really good. The offense is clicking and you got 2 pitchers that you can choose from.
Yeah. And so then is the debate. And you guys started talking about this late in the first game on Sunday. Do you pitch Emma Lemley in the second game because she was doing really well? And I told you guys you were crazy. I'm like, I get the logic of what you're saying, but it's Keely Rochard. She's one of the better pitchers in Tech history. It's potentially her last game in Blacksburg. Right. You have to pitch her. And Pete Demore did not. He starts Lemley in the second game, and she gives up 2 home runs in the first 9 pitches. And suddenly, I bet your phones got pretty busy too. My phone was very busy after those 9 pitches. So what was going through your mind at that point?
Well, I think, too, and again, that goes back to Jamie Bailey, how big that 2-run homer was, bottom 1, to offset the momentum. Because to give Emma Lemley credit, she settled down. I think she struck out to end that top of the first. Like, you could tell after she gave those 2 home runs, like, just the calm nature, like, she settled down pretty quickly. But, I mean, listen, Keely Rochard's going to be a Virginia Tech Sports Hall of Famer one day. Right. She's one of the best pitchers in the last 5-6 years of college softball. But I think, again, I go back to something that the Coach Lawson of Kentucky said. They had been preparing for weeks for Virginia Tech. And I'm willing to say they were probably preparing more for Rochard in the fact that they had seen her more, right? And that is Tech's ace. And I think when you look at, I don't know if you have the stats in front of you, David, but in that Saturday game, Lemley, we said she gave up what? 2 runs in almost a complete game against Kentucky, right? Yeah. And then in game 1, she was fantastic, especially considering the fact that it was going to be a 30-minute wait from game 1 to game 2. You take Lemley into the indoor practice facility, you let her keep throwing a little bit, and then you bring her right out there.
And it wound up being an hour and a half, actually.
And that's why, too, I mean, the confidence in, I mean, Lemley and Rochard are similar pitchers, right? They both have tremendous rise balls. I think that Keely has a little bit more spin on her rise ball, and Emma throws a little bit harder, but they're both fantastic options. And I think Coach Demore's thought process was, let's ride the hot hand here. Let's see how far that it can go. And then immediately, when you need to, you bring in your ace to try and go get you a win and take you to supers.
Yeah, it's not only that, but it could be a matchup issue. It could be that, number one, like you said, maybe they were preparing more for Keely. And the thing that struck me about Kentucky, seeing their top 4 batters, it's a murderer's row. They're all,
oh my gosh,
they're all hitting close to 400 or more, 15, 20 home runs. This, if you can get through the top 4 batters, you're doing well. But Pete may have just felt like Emma was a better matchup for Kentucky. Guys, I looked at the stats before in prepping for this, and I got it written down here somewhere. Opponents' batting averages against Emma and Keely are almost the same now. Mm-hmm. I think one of them's .171 and one of them's .176. They're closer as pitchers statistically.
Right.
Not experience-wise or in the number of pitches and the off-speed and that kind of thing. They're getting closer and closer, and that's great for Pete Demore.
Yeah, well, so I just did a quick little math on Emma's stats from the first 2 Kentucky games. She threw 139 strikes in 192 pitches. That's 72%. So 72% of her pitches were strikes. And yes, she gave up 7 hits in the first game and 8 hits in the second game, but she only gave up 4 runs.
Right.
So like she was, yes, okay, giving up some hits, but Tech's defense was doing its job. And so you can either, throw out a fresh Keely Rochard, or you can throw the pitch, yes, she's thrown, she threw 94 pitches the game before, but she only given up 2 runs. And I think, I think in the end it was the right move because they brought Keely in. I don't want to say Pete did because Pete wasn't on the field for it.
Pete wasn't there. But we'll get to that in a minute.
But they brought Keely in, they brought Keely in the right time, but they let Emma continue to grind the batters down. And, outside of that, Kentucky didn't really do much after the first inning. Kowalik, an All-American. Evan mentioned that I believe she's on the U.S. Olympic team. She homers on the 3rd pitch of the game. Then Emma gets a fly out, and then a homer to center on the 4 pitches for
on the 9th pitch of the
Koffel.
game.
Yeah. And then she got a pop-up and a strikeout. And then it's, okay, well, what are you going to do? Or, are you going to pull her? They didn't because Jamie, Emma Ritter singles, and then Jamie Bailey homers, and now it's a tie ball game again. Right. And so, okay, level playing field, let her keep going.
But even more to that, too, right? I mean, the fact that after she gave up those 2 home runs, he could have pulled her right there, right, and gone right to Keely. And the confidence from not only Coach DeMoore, but I think the best pitching coach in the country. Favorite stat, Doug Gillis has coached 4 conference pitchers of the years in 4 of the 5 Power 5 conferences. The dude just knows pitching. He's phenomenal. The confidence to stick with that game plan and to let Emma finish out the first like she did. I think she got a strikeout to end that top of the first. The confidence in her. And I thought it was, we'll get to it a little bit later. I mean, the perfect time when Doug took her out, Coach Gillis, I thought it was the perfect time. And I know the other thing, too, is that Hokie fans are probably thinking, well, this is what happened yesterday. You started Lemley, Keely came in, and they hit her. The confidence from Coach DeMoore and Coach Gillis as well to say, listen, that happened. It's not going to happen again. Yeah. We've got that much confidence in our All-American, our 2-time ACC pitcher of the year, that if she comes in again, she's gonna close the door, and that she did.
Yeah. So he starts Lemley, and your question in your mind is how quick is he going to pull her? And clearly, it's not quick because number 1, she gave up 2 home runs and he left her in. Number 2, he got ejected defending her in the 2nd inning, and that tells you he's committed. That's who he's going with, and I don't think ejections are accidental. I don't think he lost his mind.
I have a funny ejection story. So a buddy of mine, I haven't seen him in a long time, but he was an umpire, and he was friends with an umpire from Chuck Hartman's last game at Virginia Tech. And I went to this game.
Last game, wow.
Yeah, and a Tech player slid into 3rd base at one point and he got called out. I thought he was safe too, and Hartman went out to argue and actually tried to get ejected from his last game. and the umpire, and this is the story I heard from my umpire buddy, the umpire looked at Hartman and said, "Coach, I'm not going to eject you in your last game, so you might as well go on back to the dugout." And just like that, he turned around and went back to the dugout.
That's funny.
I'm not going to be
guy. We were talking about it last night, and Evan, who knows more of the softball rules than I do, reminder, this is an former 8U softball head coach legend in Evan Hughes, all-star coach, mind you. But Evan mentioned to me that it's different from baseball, where in softball, like it's, I guess, like respectful if you go talk to the home plate umpire instead of like going, in baseball you can go talk to the 3rd base umpire, if that's by your dugout. Pete stormed out to 2nd base.
Well, he comes out of the dugout and starts walking towards the 2nd base umpire.
You can see the 3rd base umpire try.
Here come the 1st base and 3rd base umpire.
And listen, I think Chip probably, by the way, who does a terrific job. Love Chip Grubb. Just shout out Chip. I know he's probably watching this. I'm excited to talk to Coach tomorrow for my podcast, but I think he went out there not to argue if it was a legal pitch or not. And if you go back and watch the broadcast, the pitch that was called illegal actually was illegal.
Of course.
But, and this is not a written rule like where it says that umpire cannot do it, but that 2nd base umpire was the 3rd base umpire game 1 of the game against Kentucky. She called 2 illegal pitches. Mm-hmm. And in my opinion, the umpire that has the best look is the third base umpire. Now, the first does too, but the first base umpire is also concerned about check swings on a right-handed batter and also concerned, obviously, about plays at first. So typically, you see illegal pitches called from the third base umpire.
And the foot that comes up is closer, assuming it's a right-handed.
Correct.
Yeah,
Like Emma is, yep. And so I think that, remember, it got called first, and then you could see Coach DeMore and Coach Gillis out of the dugout. And I think I said the only time you see Coach Gillis out of the dugout is if typically in this situation, and then there's another pitch thrown and then it's called illegal. So my not knowing this for sure, but I think that he was going out there because in his opinion, he does not think it is the second base umpire who has the worst positioning on the field, cannot see the follow through in the pitching lane to call illegal pitches. I think what he's saying is if the third base umpire is not calling it, how do you have a better look that you can call it? I think that is basically what that's my opinion of why I think he was upset.
Yeah, and she didn't call and won the rest of the game.
See, that's all fine and dandy, but I can read lips, and the words out of his mouth were, "That's BS, and you know it." That was the first thing Pete said when he got out there. Sorry.
But I think as a whole, that was kind of a turning point in the game.
Yes.
Oh, it absolutely was.
Like because this is I like, for those of you who have not read Chip Grubb's recap, please go read it. I encourage you to do so. He's got a lot of really good quotes in there. But he talked to a lot of the girls after the game just about what that moment was like. And they were like, Pete has our back every single time. And we know that. And they said, we never see Coach fired up. And what did he do? He walked back to the dugout after getting tossed and then going back and talking to the second base umpire. He walked to the dugout, and before he did, he threw his hands up in the air and got the crowd fired up. Yeah. And the crowd was ruckus for the rest of the game.
Oh, it got the crowd so fired up.
And then he goes over to Lane Stadium and starts live tweeting during the game.
That was really cool. And I think I don't know if Mike Barber had it, but the was it Bobby Valentine?
Oh yeah,
right?
It was Andy Bitter.
Andy Bitter.
That was great.
I mean, it was, but again, I think it was him. And listen, we could spend a whole podcast. I mean, by the letter of the law, we could go all the way down. But I think it would have been different had it been the third base umpire constantly calling it. Again, I'm not an expert, but that's why if that was remember they got called twice in the first game, and there were zero arguments. Right.
Right.
You never came out and saw an appeal. It was only when the umpire went to second that you started to see him get upset.
Yeah. And oh, by the way, there were no more illegal pitches called the rest of the game, And Emma was in there a long time after that. So what I want to so from that point on, I guess it was 2-2 at that point. And from that point on, eventually what has to happen is that players got to make plays.
Yeah.
And I thought probably the best tweet of the weekend that really summed things up was Hokie Sports put out a tweet showing, let me see if I can remember all of it. There were 4 critical plays in that game. Emma Ritter robbing the home run. Mackenzie Lauder hitting what wound up to be the game-winning home run.
Yeah.
Jamie Bailey's diving put out at first. And I think it was Kelsey Bennett's final put out.
Yeah, it was a tough play.
With a runner
At
running
shortstop.
right in front of her.
Yep.
Yeah. And then, of course, what's not included in that montage of plays is Bree Peck diving and stopping a grounder right before the last out.
Yep.
Now, she was not able to make the throw on target and get the last out, but, that's a double, maybe even a triple.
When you've got the tying run at first there, that gets by you. You don't know how that ball bounces, how aggressive that third base coach going to be,
Yeah, So it just comes down to players making plays, and for me to wrap it up, we enjoy watching that stuff as observers and fans, but it's all about the players at their age. They're here such a short time, and for them to be able to make the plays and win a championship, this is stuff they can take with them the rest of their lives.
Yeah.
And one of the things I put in Monday Thoughts today is, did you guys see Lonnie Alameda is at the Florida State coach? I saw on the ACC network Lonnie Alameda talking in the post game. They'd been eliminated. They were the number 2 national seed, and they got eliminated. And Lonnie's sitting there, and she's saying her thing, and she's saying all the right stuff because she's been there before. And the two players to the left and right of her were just shell shocked. They were just staring. And you don't want young people to have that look on their face. You want them to be happy. And that's what Virginia Tech's got, is a group that's had a great season, and now it gets to continue.
Yeah. Well, and I think it all came together in that fifth inning.
Yeah.
Because Tech went down 3-2. Kentucky scored a run. And I think this was the point where I turned to you and said, Tech hasn't really strung any hits together. And
And it
then,
also got really quiet in TSP.
Yeah. Well,
for about 3
the
innings.
food trucks turned the
Turned their
generators
off, and then it got really quiet.
So, but to lead off that inning, Darby Trul singles up the middle. Allie Repko pinch hitting for Kelsey Bennett, singled through the left side, advancing Darby to second.
Now let me jump in here a second. Allie, at that point, she had struck out in the first game. She'd gotten 2 balls, 3 straight strikes, and had started that at bat with 2 strikes.
Yeah.
And she's not having a great day at that point, so she gets a couple balls and gets a hit. So
got
kudos
2
for
balls,
her.
and a hit, and then and then Kentucky switched pitchers, and then literally as soon as Kentucky switched pitchers on the 5th pitch, you got 2 on. Mackenzie Lauder smacks it to left field, and at that point, Tech takes the lead 5-3 and then never trailed again. And then you have the defensive plays from Emma Ritter, sports in our top 10 play.
Yeah.
Jamie, but again, Jamie Bailey making plays, Bree Peck making plays, but in the end, it all came together when they needed it to. And this was kind of the thing I think we were all saying at the beginning of the weekend. Tech lost to Kentucky on Saturday, but was right there. Yeah. And just needing to make some plays, and they made the plays in Sunday's game and showed that they were the better team and won. And kudos to them. And to be able to see those scenes at the end of the game, it was a very nervous top of the 7th inning. But yeah, just awesome scenes at Tech softball.
Awesome scene, yeah. And I think one thing too, and I'm excited to ask Coach about this tomorrow when I talk to him. How about a credit to Mike Lewis and Doug Gillis and the rest of that staff? Your head coach exits in the 2nd inning, and this is a regional championship, right?
Yeah.
Your season's on the line. And I go back to when Mac hit that home run, and you've got runners at 1st and 2nd and nobody out, and that's the tying run on 2nd. And how about the decision from Coach Lewis? You could have maybe sack bunted there and then move the tying run to 3rd.
We were arguing that in the stands. Should you bunt?
Evan Hughes might have suggested it.
Well, no, I was just saying it was a possibility.
Yeah, he said it was an option.
And then the confidence and the faith, again, that I thought the staff down the stretch was phenomenal. And I think it just goes to show the staff that Coach DeMore has built. They deserve a huge credit, I think, for the job they did coaching that game.
Honestly, except for the live tweets, you couldn't tell that Coach had been kicked out of the game. Right?
Yeah.
So we're out in the stands out in left field, and that ball was hit pretty much straight at us.
Yeah.
So my recollection of that was it starts coming at us, and it looks like it's got home run power, but you're not sure. And our arch enemy Lauren Johnson is coming back trying to make we're joking about the left fielder for Kentucky. We learned her name, and she's coming back to make the play. A guy stands up in front of me, and I can't see. I'm not sure if that ball is going to clear the fence. And then I hear thump of it hitting the metal bleachers, and I'm like, yes, home run.
Yeah. And I will say too, how about Mackenzie Lauder, the go-ahead home run Saturday, and the go-ahead home run of the championship? I think that Mac does not get enough credit, I think, for being one of the best catchers in the country.
Yeah. Walk off against UVA this year too to win that series. So
it
doesn't hit for a high average, but very clutch hitter. Southside Virginia, Halifax County.
She continues to hit well. Same thing. You mentioned Jamie Bailey. Mackenzie Lauder's not. If you could go down the list of Virginia Tech hitters and place them, if you made a 9-player lineup just based off batting average, I don't know if she'd be in there. But she has now consistently made plays both defensively. Remember, she's calling her own game defensively
I was
too.
about to bring that up.
She's calling her own game. And she's, hit 2 2-run bombs, or I guess a 3-run bomb in that case, to win Tech the game. Those are the plays you need. And for me, Evan and I were talking about this last night. I think she's the player of the tournament, for me.
Well, yeah, and if it's not her, it might have been Jamie Bailey.
Yeah. Sure. And I just can't. I'm sorry to cut you off. I was just going to say, it is so rare to have a catcher call
Yes.
his or her own game, baseball or softball. You don't see that often. I mean, in baseball, you've got the earpiece, Chris, and the pitching coach can relay over the signs that they want or the call. But the faith, again, they go back to early high school playing for the Stars Travel Organization, Virginia Tech. The faith that Coach Gillis, who, as we just talked about his credentials, an unbelievable pitching coach in DeMora, to put that faith in Mackenzie Lauder. I think they talked about it a lot this weekend. I think people don't know that, but that is just, you just don't see that. That's incredibly impressive.
Well, watch a college baseball game or a college softball game. Between every pitch, the pitcher looks at the wristband to get and that's just,
Oh, yeah.
I know that's how everybody does it, but it goes back to when I was a kid and NFL quarterbacks called their own plays. You know? And then after a while, no, they did not. So.
And, I mean, it's I just lost my train of thought for a second, but even just not with Keeley. They let her call when Emma is in the circle or Ivy. I mean, she just knows the game just as well as any. I mean, I think it's important. We talk about like the point guard needs to be the extension of the coach on the floor, right? Yeah. Or the quarterback. I think your catcher, you can make the argument, needs to be the extension of the coaching staff on a softball or baseball field. And both teams, Kate Hunter and Mackenzie Lauder, you've certainly got that.
Yeah, and they're really going to miss Lauder next year, and we know that. And so if there's something mysterious about next year and you just can't figure out, I mean, I hope they have a good year next year, but if something's not quite right, that's going to be part of it. So excellent weekend, guys. I don't know if there's anything else we can add to that, but we do. Go ahead, David.
I was going to say talk about the upcoming regional, because now Virginia Tech gets to host a super regional, first ever Blacksburg super regional.
Tickets have already sold out, from what I understand. And I'm thinking about doing a podcast Wednesday and having Chip on the preview. This is going to be a lot easier than previewing the regional because he's only got to study one team.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And no doubt Florida is going to be a formidable, however you prefer to pronounce it, opponent. But I think we'll get to that later on this week. And just very cool. And this is an accomplishment. Baseball's hosted a regional, softball's won a regional, but softball's the first one to host and win. Yeah. So great stuff.
Yeah, it's going to be a great crowd on hand. There's no, I mean, and I'll just close with this. I mean, on the softball side, what a unique, think about unique Tech sporting events.
Yeah.
And to have outfield bleachers, 2,000 fans, but it felt like a lot more than that. Yeah. I mean, that to me was one of the more unique Tech sporting events that I can remember attending. Because everybody that was there was totally invested, totally bought in. The sun could not keep people away. The rain, 1 o'clock in the morning. Yeah. I mean, the fans were off the charts, and I'm sure that, and I think the Kentucky coach said it felt like a super regional. It really did. Let's also not forget that Kentucky, and we had this conversation, it's really based off location, right? Who's in your regional. It's not, this is the X number, a part of the 2 seed. I mean, I think Coach said it. That's got to be one of the best 2 seeds that was put in the number 3 overall region.
Right.
So to beat that Kentucky team, I mean, that's a big time win against a really good SEC team. I mean, if Kentucky were to play Florida in this week's Super, I mean, who knows who would win that? Yeah. I mean, Kentucky could do it. So I thought the competition was really good, top to bottom. That's what you'd expect in a regional.
She got off a good line. She said it felt like a super regional with a few games against other teams thrown in for fun. I thought that was pretty good. Rachel Lawson, her comments were very gracious. So that said, let's take a break. And I think we're going to shift people around. And actually, I think we can stay the way we are. Chris will definitely be talking more next time because when we get back, we're going to talk Tech baseball. And so we'll see you in a few minutes. All right, bathroom break taken, Diet Mountain Dew retrieved, and we're all good to go. Second half of the show, we're going to talk about Virginia Tech baseball. Incredible accomplishments by them this weekend, somewhat overshadowed by what the softball team did. But let's get into baseball. And so we're going to get into the postseason awards here more towards the end. Just some well-deserved awards going out to Tech coaches and players. Let's begin with the big news. They clinched the number 1 seed in the ACC Championship. Do you call it a tournament or a championship? I call it the championship.
Yeah, they'll call it the tournament. I mean, and the ACC does formally recognize the tournament as its champion, and then the Atlantic and the Coastal. But to me, I mean, it's an ACC championship too. I mean, to go wire to wire, The ACC has been the best conference in college baseball this year.
Yeah.
D1 baseball has 11 teams projected of the 14 to make a regional in the SEC 9. And so for this Tech team to win 9 straight ACC series, it has been unbelievable to watch. And I just cannot emphasize how hard, and CC, you know this, to win 9 straight in this conference. It's unheard of. It's unbelievable.
It's certainly the best Tech baseball team I've ever seen. And it was, I think about halfway through the season, we were talking about, do you give the nod to this year's team or the 2013 team? And at the time, I gave the nod to the 2013 team because they had more pitching depth. They had 4 starters that went on to play professional baseball. Like, one of their guys was a senior who couldn't even make weekend starts because the other 3 guys were so good. I think he still made it to Double-A.
Okay.
Right? So that was a loaded staff, but this team hits it so well. It's 100 homers for the first time since 1988. And Will, you could probably answer this question. The stadium back then, you can't even call it a stadium. It was the baseball field.
Right.
It was where the football practice field was. So people would hit them off the wall of the
Jamerson
That
Athletics.
tells me that was a short porch in left field.
Well, Trey McCoy could hit the ball pretty hard, so it was probably short.
But
yeah.
to Chris's point, it's been a really impressive year.
Yeah.
And I think irony how it plays out, like Virginia. I think Chad Willis tweeted Virginia Tech men's basketball started 0-4 and then won the AC tournament. Virginia Tech baseball starts 0-4 in the conference. They got swept, and you were there, and it was at Georgia Tech, and it was extra innings, 14 innings or 12 innings.
So they played 2 games on Sunday in Atlanta.
It was a doubleheader and
2
extra
9-inning
innings.
games, 40 minutes in between, and the second game was 14 innings.
Yeah.
They started, I want to say, at 1 o'clock, and we didn't get done playing till 10:30.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then Tech. Well, as I was going to say, Tech lost that, and then lost the first game in that Pitt series, and then won every single series between that, which was early March, late February, until this weekend when they swept Duke. And it's not like they've been doing against Joe Schmo. 6 of them have been ranked.
So halfway through the season, I think we were all in agreement that, our baseball team is good, but our softball team is elite. Our baseball team might actually be better than our softball team. You're splitting hairs. They're ranked second in the country.
This morning, number 2 in the country.
And the ACC is loaded.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think even to David's point a little bit more. Again, so early March, got off to a good start in non-conference. You're swept in Atlanta. You had a lead going bottom 9 the series opener, lost. You had a lead going bottom 14, lost. Then you had to bus back Monday from Atlanta because they got done playing so late they don't want to bus all the way back to the middle of the night. Then you got to get on the bus Tuesday morning, go to JMU. You lose at JMU.
Wow.
And then that Friday, they lose to Pittsburgh. So they're 0-4 in the conference. But let's go back to last year. This team that led the Coastal, right, in early April. And then some of the youth and inexperience showed. You lose
injuries also, right?
Absolutely. That was a huge thing. You lose your Friday, your Saturday, your Sunday starter, and your number 1 reliever in Shane Connolly to the draft.
And your first baseman.
You've got a new third baseman coming. I mean, you're moving Cross from right to center. Hunter was hurt the majority. I mean, so many things. And for this team to be ACC champs in the regular season with 3 new starters, with a bullpen that has been, I think, a sub 3.5 ERA since they went on this run in mid-March, to the hitting. I mean, Coach Sheff, I think people see the record and they think Coach of the Year because of the record. I think he deserves Coach of the Year too because of the development. And that's Ryan Fecto, that's Kurt Albin, that's Tyler Hansen. The entire staff has Griffin Green was a midweek guy last year as a freshman out of the bullpen. He's your Friday starter. He won 7 games, has a sub 3 ERA. Drew Hackenberg as a true freshman. Now, he's not a true freshman. Let's just call it out. I mean, listen, his family, the dude is like as cool as they go, and he might as well be 23 the way he's pitching. And then the development of Jordan Bieber.
He won 10 games too.
He won 10 games, and he had the best ERA of any starter in the ACC. He did not win Pitcher of the Year. He did not win Freshman of the Year. I think he was incredibly deserving of both. the guy who had more, guy from Wake Forest had more strikeouts, same record, a little bit higher ERA. They gave it to him for pitcher of the year, and then freshman of the year they gave it to Tommy White. Tommy Tanks is you remember the nickname from early in the year. But again, to wrap this all up, the job this staff has done.
Yeah.
It's remarkable. And I think the one thing we've learned about this team, yes, they're number 2 now, but they can compete with any team in the country. At number 11, Virginia, 2 of 3. Home against number 2, Miami. Home against number 21, North Carolina State. At North Carolina. I asked Coach during our post-game show on Saturday. He came up in enjoyment. I said, when did you know this team was going to be special? And he sat there and he thought about it, and he said, honestly, it was the Final Four weekend for basketball. We were playing at North Carolina, and that's a place that is extremely hard to win. And they took 2 of 3 from North Carolina, and they took Friday and Saturday in convincing fashion. I remember that we had back-to-back home runs. The Hokies, Schobel and Cross, back-to-back 2 separate times in the same game. I mean, North Carolina is as good as it gets, and you're able to go in there and take 2 of 3 and hit the ball. I mean, that's the thing. This team, yeah, I think everyone saw how good they were in the non-conference, but it's Wright State or it's Fordham. They did it against Virginia. They did it against Miami. They scored 21 runs against North Carolina State. It was a game away from the College World Series
They
championship.
were actually better against ACC teams than they were.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And
It's almost like they got bored with the non-conference teams.
It's top to bottom, Will. I mean, it really, how about Carson Jones, your ACC player of the week. The kid just hit 5 homers in his last 4 games. He made his second start of the season last Tuesday. Phenomenal.
He had, I think, played in 1 game in the month of April.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. And it was his first start since the Georgia Tech weekend. How about Lucas Donlin? All right. Nick Holisa got a lot of starts at first base early in the year. And I haven't asked Coach this, but I get the starting lineup at Fenway Park. And Lucas Donlin's getting the start at first. It was his 5th start of the year. And I want to say his starts had come earlier, and this was his first big start of the year.
Is he a freshman?
He's a sophomore, true sophomore.
Okay.
He hits in the 8-hole. And he goes 3 for 5 and scores 2 runs in a 6-1 game in Fenway Park.
Yeah.
So, the development of this team too, mid-season, the fact that this team had belief to bring in Carson Jones, look at what he's doing. Lucas Donlin a month ago, he's your everyday first baseman. It's almost like you. I was joking with someone. It's almost like the waiver wire and the trade deadline. It's like you get 2 players in the middle of the season that have been impact players.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And I think when you look at a guy like Carson Jones, not that you feel great about losing Gavin Cross to the draft, but now you feel like, okay, Carson Jones, if he's got this kind of power, we're not going to lose as much as we thought we were, because Cross is going to be a top 10, top 15 pick.
Absolutely.
But now he seems more replaceable than he did a week ago, I'll say.
And Coach brought that up too during our post-game shows, that good teams, you're going to lose some players to the draft. That's just the way it works.
Yeah.
In college baseball. But Chris is 100% right. Like Carson DeMartini's a guy that can play shortstop. Warren Holzheimer, the staff is really high on. He has not played much this year behind Tanner Schobel, but they believe, Christian Martin at second base.
As he said, you're not going
Tanner
to play
Schobel's
behind
going to
Tanner
be
Schobel.
taken in the first 5 rounds?
I think
he's one of the top 150 prospects on MLB.com.
Tech has 4 or 5 of those guys.
Cade Hunter.
Cade Hunter's I
think they're actually back to back in the 130s.
And I think too, you can make the case that the MVP of this team is Cade Hunter behind the plate. Because if you remember last year, it was well documented that it was at different portions of the year that you lost a starter due to injury. Maybe you lose Gerard, he comes back, then Simonelli got hurt. And you could not keep your rotation intact Friday through Sunday. But Cade Hunter got hurt early March and really didn't play the rest of the year. Yeah. And Coach talked about he went to the Cape this summer and really struggled. And for this year, for him to come back and hit around 340 right now and to be second on the team in RBIs, but he's caught almost every game. And for him, in 2020, right, his season cut short. 2021, he missed almost all the injury. He is so valuable behind the plate. The fact that he can catch every pitcher on this team. And I always say, I think you got to have the best, to be a catcher, you've got to have the best personality on the team, because you're working with 10 to 15 different guys. You got to know what their go-to pitch is, what are the right things to say when you go onto the mound and you try and calm them down when you need to. And he won the Johnny Oates Memorial Award. Of course, Johnny Oates, one of the greatest Hokie baseball players of all time, went on to be a great manager. And I just know that this staff speaks so highly of him. He has while the pitching staff is now getting the credit that it deserves, the bullpen and the bats, but Cade Hunter behind the plate has been off the charts good this year for this team.
It's funny because it's kind of the same thing we mentioned with softball, like Mackenzie Lauder. Like you got two fantastic catchers, and Virginia Tech wouldn't be here without him.
Is he the one they're talking about that batted like once in the 170s last year? Or,
No, he hit well last year, but he got hurt early.
Right.
I'm trying to think who hit 170.
was it Jack Hurley?
Oh, it might have been.
No, Hurley was really
Hurley
good.
was good. He has Jack. One thing he's done to really improve his game is that he's cut down on his strikeouts a lot from last year. And coaches talked about how his approach has changed, how he's more comfortable hitting with 2 strikes. But I mean, no, for the most part, this team this year, I mean, the transfers. How about Eduardo Malinowski at second base? I mean, he's been a plug and play right away. He's been great at second base. I mean, Carson DiMartini, a true freshman, hitting .333, and he's not a traditional 9-hole hitter. He's got a 13 homers and around 40 RBIs.
And that's your 9-hole.
That's your 9-hole.
He's not going to be your 9-hole hitter next year.
And then right now, I mean, the options Tech has too with Carson Jones playing well. That's an outfielder. Connor Hardigan, the JMU transfer, he's another outfielder. You've got 5 outfielders, but you can play Bitterson at first base. You can put Jones in right. You can DH Hardigan. I mean, right now this team, kind of like Pete DeMore in softball, you've got a ton of options right now and how you can not only construct your lineup, but your defensive lineup as well. So
it sounds like Chef's just hitting his stride here, and I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see if the transfer portal is as much of a thing in some of the other sports as it is in football. Like I worry, and basketball. I worry about I think about Virginia Tech is a good baseball program right now. It's a little bit difficult because they're a cold weather program. You get the fan support this time of year, but the place is not a whole lot of people in it earlier in the year. And there are some SEC schools and even some ACC schools that are really into baseball. Mm-hmm. And I just wonder if there might be some NIL stuff and transfer portal stuff that goes on. And this is the stuff I think about because if you're Virginia Tech and you want to succeed, you got to develop players. Mm-hmm. And both softball and baseball are really developing players right now. We can't sit here and pick apart any flaws with either one of these teams. We're really proud of what they've done. So you start looking around going, how can this go south? They got to keep the players here. Sorry, I don't want to be that downer guy because we're talking about,
I think the transfer portal has been more beneficial to Tech baseball than it's hurt it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No question. I mean, they've brought in some really good players and players, that might not be elite stars, but they've gotten some more pitching depth this year. Yeah. But because of the transfer portal.
Yeah.
Not to cut you off, but real quick, I mean, just thinking off the top of my head, like Graham Fireved, who's been electric out of the bullpen this year with one of the best fastballs, Chris. I don't know if you know, it's got so much movement, his fastball. It's why he can throw it so much. He started his career at Radford, JUCO, then brought to Virginia Tech.
That's right.
Eduardo Malinowski, Jordan Gieber, I think is the name over the next month of this year that we're going to spend a lot of time talking about. Starter at Mount St. Mary's. Chris Hirons just wrote a wonderful piece for you guys last week, detailing the car accident that he was in and how they're starting to ramp him up more. When you get into these regionals, and even this weekend, Chris, when you go Thursday through Sunday, pitching is going to be extremely important.
He is the reason why I think Virginia Tech has a chance to win the national championship.
Because they have a third starter.
Now. And if you'd asked me a month ago, even less than a month ago, if Tech could win it, I'd say no. I think they can get to a super regional, maybe even the College World Series. But once they go up against one of those teams that has 3 legitimate, once you're in an 8-team double elimination format, unless you have that third starter, it's going to be really difficult to win. And Tech didn't have a third starter at that point. Now they look like they do. So I think Tech, I'm not going to say they're going to win the national championship because there's a lot of really good teams that could win it, but they've got just as good a chance as anybody else right now because man, they can crush the ball, man.
Oh my gosh!
Yeah.
If they were like a late '90s MLB team, I would be like, that team's on steroids, man. They crush it.
Well, so then out of the bullpen, Fireved transfer. Jonah Hurney started his college career at JUCO in Oregon, then came to Virginia Tech. Kieran Higgins transfer, who started his career at Coastal, then to Shippensburg, then to Virginia Tech. Gieber, transfer. Malinowski, transfer. Sean Fisher, transfer. I mean, I hope I'm not leaving anybody out, but and then you combine that. Hardigan, transfer. Thank you. Again, another guy in your lineup. Then you combine that. Think about the recruiting classes that coach has brought in, right? Like his first class, the two big names, Carson Taylor, who was a 4th-round pick by the Dodgers in 2020, and Nick Bitterson, who I think will forever be joined at the hip with Coach Shep as that first marquee recruit that he got. He was initially committed to North Carolina. Kurt Elbin was a previous assistant at VCU. When Coach Sheff added him to his staff, he knew Nick, he knew his store, and he got him here. And I asked Coach about him over the weekend.
Hunter Couture.
Yeah, I think that's a really good way of looking at it. Absolutely. And Coach even said on senior day, that he thinks players will owe him a ton of gratitude down the road for kind of being that guy that could show. Jack Hurley, he recruited. Gavin Cross, he recruited. So you combine that with the transfer and the ability to look at really good talent and see how they'd fit, combined with great recruiting classes. It's been the perfect combo in shaping this roster.
So you guys follow this stuff up, how good is the talent pool, the high school talent pool in the state of Virginia, and how well does Virginia Tech recruit?
Very strong. I mean, it's not Georgia or something like that, but it's very, very strong. Baseball in the state of Virginia is very good. We've got a lot of in-state players on this team.
Yeah.
So if you go around the diamond, right, let's assume Holise is starting at first. He's from Virginia. Second base, Malinowski is not, but Donlin sometimes plays second. He's from Virginia. Schobel's from Virginia Beach. DeMartini's from Virginia Beach.
Williamsburg. Schobel's from Williamsburg.
We can have a debate.
right.
I think you got to loop 757.
Yeah,
it's
okay.
Virginia Beach, the whole thing.
Yeah,
David and I go back and
yeah.
forth about that.
Just say the 757.
But then even some Carson Jones from Deep Run High School in Richmond, right? Nick Bitterson, St. Christopher's Private School, Richmond, Virginia. Backup catcher Dylan Hatfield from Roanoke. There's a new Tyler Dean, who's going to be a really great arm down the road. Northern Virginia. I think this staff has done a really great job.
Hackenberg, right?
That's a great point. From Palmyra. I don't know if he's born there, but he grew up there.
Yeah.
He's from Virginia. I didn't even think about the pitching
Wow.
side.
Do you know what high school he went to?
Well, his brother went to Fork Union.
Yeah.
He went to the private school, the Miller School, I believe.
Okay.
That's where he came out of. Graham Fireved from the 757. He's actually from Virginia Beach, to be fair. He actually is from the beach. So, point being, a lot of in-state talent on this team.
And that's not even counting, I don't know, Jack Hurley from Pennsylvania and Gavin Cross from Bristol, Tennessee.
And Gavin Cross is just across the border.
Yeah, so that
he's practically from Virginia.
So there's a lot of in-state.
Go back to what Coach Price said, right, about recruiting. You draw the pencil and do that little radius. If you do that with Tech baseball, you've got a large portion of that team. Christian Martin, who's played a lot, he's from just outside of Lynchburg, I believe. I mean, it goes on and on. A lot of Virginia players.
So let's get into, let's talk about the ACC Championship a little bit, and then we can talk about some of the postseason awards that the guys have won. So for those not familiar with how they do the ACC Championship, lay it out for me.
So it's
12 teams make it, right?
Correct. So 14 teams in the ACC. The one ACC school does not have baseball, is Syracuse. You've got 14 teams, 12 qualify. And it's based off of winning percentage, not overall record, because due to weather, not every team plays the same number of ACC games. But it is 4 pools, 3 teams in each pool. They moved to this format in 2016. I would say the most important thing about going to the ACC tournament is getting that top 4 seed. So you've got your Coastal, you've got your Atlantic Division in baseball. The winners of each division are guaranteed a top 2 seed. And then the one with the best winning percentage gets 1 and the other gets 2. Then from 3 to 12, it's all done based off winning percentage, regardless of division. So going into game 2 against Duke on Friday, the Hokies still trailed Miami for the best winning percentage. They were going to be the 3 seed at the ACC tournament if Miami did not slip up, because they'd have the best, even though they'd have a better winning percentage than anybody on the Atlantic.
Okay.
Those 2 are guaranteed.
All right, I wondered about that.
Yep. So you've got 3, and then the important thing to get that top 4 seed is if everybody in your pod or pool goes 1-1, the team with the highest seed automatically advances to the semifinals.
Yeah. So for some reason, so in Virginia Tech's pool, it's Virginia Tech, North Carolina, and then Clemson. If for some reason all 3 teams went 1-1, Virginia Tech would advance.
Yeah.
And the teams in the pod, which we can talk about, Clemson, coming off of a sweep of Boston College, they have a losing record in the ACC, but they are one of the last teams projected to make the NCAA tournament according to D1 baseball. The only team in the field that is not projected to make it is Pittsburgh. and they're the 11 seed.
Right. So Virginia Tech is the number 1 8 seed, and they're in a pod with number 8 UNC and number 12 Clemson.
Yep.
Pretty nice, you know. And of course, as you do the second, third, and fourth seeds, the opponents get a little bit higher seeded, and in theory, a little tougher. And it actually is. If you're not in the top 4, be that number 5, because UVA is a number 5. They're in a pod with the number 4 seed, and then somebody further back.
I feel like I don't really feel rewarded for being the number 1 seed in the tournament because I look and it's Clemson and North Carolina for goodness
It's
sake.
the ACC.
Exactly.
It's,
As we talk about, Chris, everybody is so good.
I know.
Right. I mean, Clemson's got the ACC Player of the Year on their team, and North Carolina is coming off of a sweep of Florida State. So it's going to be a really exciting putt. But the way I look at it, it's not like basketball, right? Where you're the 1 seed, you get a bye, and then you get like the 15 or the 14 seed, right?
And
it's
they
a little
suck.
different in baseball, right? Like you've got to play.
Why don't the champions of the Atlantic and the champions of the Coastal
Get
just get a
buys.
bye? Everybody else
plays
You go right to the semis.
Yeah, right.
I love that option.
I mean, an actual reward for finishing first and for winning.
And I
Not a
also
bad
think
idea.
that Tech playing. So the tournament starts Tuesday.
Yeah.
Tech's going to start Thursday. I think that's a advantage for the Hokies because it's like a regional setup, right? Where it's across 4 days. So it's a little bit of a practice for a regional, right? Where you've got 4 days to try and win a regional. So instead of playing Tuesday, then maybe being off Thursday and then back Saturday and kind of scattered like some teams would be, you know you're playing Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. You know what's in front of you to manage your bullpen.
Yeah, and I think it's important to know that I did not know this until I talked with Evan and Mike Scovan, the baseball sports
Shout 'em
information
out.
director. Yeah, Mike is great. I was talking to these guys at the softball game at midnight, 1 a.m, and they mentioned, I did not know this, that the team that is the number 1 seed gets to pick their off day in the tournament. So Virginia Tech chose to essentially play Thursday, Friday, when they could have potentially, you could have played like Wednesday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. Yeah. They chose to play Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So maybe you're sitting there going, well, why would they do that? But as Evan just explained, it's a regional feel to it. And, essentially, I don't know what John Sheff will do, but you've got 3 starters. You can choose what order to throw the 3 starters in, and then Sunday just go at it.
Yeah,
I don't know what they're
because whoever you play on Sunday, it's going to be the same thing for that other team. It's going to be a bullpen battle.
Yeah.
So you've got these 4 pods, and then 4 winners come out of it.
Correct.
Is it the Final Four single elimination?
Yes.
Okay.
If you lose the semis, you're done.
So correct me if I'm wrong here. The semis on Saturday and the final on Sunday are all on the ACC network, or maybe ESPN.
I would think
or
so. I'm
whatever.
sure the championship's
What's the point of having the ACC network?
All the pod stuff is on RSN, which means I won't be able to watch.
I don't know if they are or not.
Well, that's what I've seen, though.
But regardless,
Dude, I've said that on Twitter. It better be right.
You can always listen across the Virginia Tech Sports Network. We go on air 15 minutes, free Hokie Sports app. Great way to listen in. I'll have you covered.
I have listened to you on my phone.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
awesome.
There
You've
you
seen
go.
a picture.
So if Tech ends up winning the pool, they'll play at 1 p.m. and it would be from they play the winner of the D pool.
Right. The 4 or the 5, you'd think, comes out of that.
So
could be Virginia.
Notre Dame and Virginia, I think, are 4 or 5.
it's Notre Dame, Virginia, and Florida State, which is a loaded.
So read out real quick Pool C, because let's just say if Tech were the 3 and Miami did not slip up, this would be the opponents if they were the 3 seed.
So Pool 1 is Virginia Tech, North Carolina, Clemson. Pool B is Louisville, Georgia Tech, and Pitt. Pool C is Miami, Wake Forest, and NC State. NC State is the 10 seed.
They're not a real.
They've been a top 25 team almost all season.
Yeah.
And then the D pool is Notre Dame, Virginia, and Florida State.
Wow.
I would not want to be in Pool C or D.
I mean, even Florida State in the down year is Florida State.
So Tech really. The reason I bring that up, Tech really had to take care of business this past weekend against Duke.
Yeah.
They knew going into it that they either had to take 2 of 3 from Duke, and Notre Dame had to take 2 of 3 from Miami, or if they swept, they would need just 1 Miami loss.
And they
swept, and that's exactly the scenario that they had to do it, and they did. So, credit to them for. I mean, I think Tech right now too playing really good baseball. Like this weekend, the pitching was excellent.
Everything this year. I mean, I think we all assumed Tech was going to be able to hit this year. It was just how good's the pitching going to be? Are they going to have bullpen depth? And how good is their defense going to be? Well, their defense has been much improved, in my opinion.
Yep, top 10 fielding percentage in the country.
Exactly, and pretty decent range with guys like Schobel. And I think so. I just think this team, they've shown the ability to win in multiple ways.
Yeah.
I mean, there
No
have been
doubt.
times like the first game against Duke where they needed to score 15 runs to win. That's been rare, but they can do it.
Or Liberty down 1-0, bottom 9, find a way.
Find a way. But they've
Rally
also
boobs.
been able to. They've also shown the ability, again, like Liberty, to win pitcher stools.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I
And to
mean,
come from behind a lot. Not
Correct,
to cut you
right.
off. This team, since Virginia, when they went down 4-0 in the second inning and came back to win that game 7-5 in the rubber match, or the Liberty game, or even Duke, they were down 9-5 on Thursday.
That's right.
And they scored 5 runs in 12 minutes. That includes the warm-up of the pitcher to start the inning. 5 batters, 5 runs, no outs recorded. It was literally like that fast.
Yeah.
yeah, they're a lot of fun because no lead is too big to be overcome.
yeah,
in their
yeah,
minds.
they just crushed the ball. Like when it was 1-0 Liberty, that's almost shocking. It's like, did we play our? I mean, Liberty's good.
Yeah.
They are
but,
really
but
good
it's
team.
it's a rare occasion that Tech's going to be at that point in the game and have no.
Tech
runs
was
at all.
down to its final out with a runner on first. Wild pitch, and then Malinowski was down 0-1 in the count and hit the game-tying hit, and then 2 at-bats later, walk-off. I mean, it's just, they've got that ability. Like, they just don't get, sometimes I think you can tell when a team kind of gets in their own head a little bit and they're trailing, and you could start to see it's just a very steady, like, again, it feels, the similarities between the softball and baseball teams this year, there are a ton of similarities.
And it's for both of them. It's anybody can come up with the play anytime.
Well, and that's what Chef said, and that's what the softball team did.
Yeah. Whether it is Malinowski, whether it's DeMartini, whether it's Jamie Bailey,
Any
whether it's
part of the
Emma Ritter,
lineup. Yep.
It's anybody. You know, they can throw anybody in. Like we saw, Ali Repko came in yesterday and got a hit. You know,
She's like a 215 hitter, and she comes in and gets an important
Carson
hit.
Taylor. I mean, it's the
and it's amazing. They're both ranked second, third in the
second and
country?
third in the country.
Yeah, again, like I keep
Imagine
saying,
that.
it goes in my brain and goes right back out.
So the other big thing about Tech advancing to super regionals in softball, as opposed to being knocked out in regionals, is that's more points towards the Directors' Cup, which will mean an overall higher finish.
Yeah.
So hopefully baseball can do the same thing. But like legitimately, I think the baseball team is really, really complete.
Yeah.
So which means they have a chance to make a deep run.
So at D1 Baseball, I did not look at their updated projections this morning. By the way, D1 Baseball is kind of like the poll that you use in baseball. It's what ESPN uses. Last week, they were the projected number 3 overall seed.
I believe Chris Hirons
think
this
they're
weekend
number 2
tweeted they were the number 2 projected
Yeah,
overall
because
seed.
but whoever was number 2 last week, I forget who it was. Was it
Oregon State, I think.
UCLA beat them.
Yep.
UCLA beat them in that
So
series.
I'm willing to, number one, they are a lock to host a regional. There's no question.
Yeah, that
about
was the next topic
That's
of
to be
discussion.
that's to be a top 16 seed, and then to be a national seed is to be top 8. They're projected 2 right now, and I think regardless of what happens this week in Charlotte, they're going to be a lock to be a top 8 seed, which means if you win the regional, they're going to host a super as well.
Mm-hmm.
And we are going to be busy deep into June, man. This is wild. Having done this for so many years. I mean, Chris remembers this. Spring football would end, and that was it.
Yeah, nothing to do.
Yeah, and football recruiting would start up in the summer. You'd have to cover some of that. But
Can I bring this up real quick, too? I thought Hokie Sports had a great stat today that Pete DeMoore and John Sheff are the first baseball and softball coaches to win ACC Coach of the Year from the same school in the conference since 2005.
2005. Yep, I saw that.
I assume that was Georgia Tech. Since they're the only school to have won the ACC, right? Both teams to have won the baseball and softball regular season title in the same year. That would be my guess. So
That's a great guess. That's amazing. I mean, 2005. We were in kindergarten, D. Connor. I mean, like, it's a long time. Like,
yeah, Malcolm
and
too.
Malcolm. I haven't gotten to say best producer in the land today, by the way. I just want to say shout out Malcolm Stewart behind the scenes. Great
Best
to see him
producer in
doing
the land.
best producer in the land. I'm
right.
glad Jay kept that going.
So let's talk about the awards. Coach of the Year, John Sheff, of course.
If anybody voted anybody else number 1, I don't see how you could possibly.
You're a damn fool.
And Evan was talking about he honestly should probably have a really good case for National Coach of the Year too.
Absolutely.
Like he should there should be a really good chance he wins National Coach of the Year.
He probably will.
And as I told you, Will, the other day, my favorite part, and I encourage everybody to go on Evan's Twitter and go find the SoundCloud link from a couple days ago with his, 9.5-ish minute interview with John Sheff after the game. My favorite part was the beginning because Evan says, it's your PK's post-game report. And John Sheff goes, hold on a minute, PKs? He's, I love PKs.
He cuts me off and goes, I love PKs. I look like a coach. I love PKs too. And we had a great laugh together. He's like, I eat PKs all the time. Yes.
Free advertising right there on the Tech Sideline
PKs is the
podcast.
place to go if you want to see athletic department employees.
Yes.
Actually. Yeah.
Yep. All right. So all ACC first team, Gavin Cross, future top 10 pick, Gavin Cross.
Yeah, and I want to say Joe Saunders was the number 12 or 13 overall pick in the draft. 12th, and he's the highest Tech pick ever, right?
All
So
right.
it's possible that Gavin Cross becomes the highest pick ever for Virginia Tech.
Drew Hackenberg, starting pitcher, first team. Kudos to whoever
Well
does the
deserved.
voting.
Yep.
Yeah. Jack Hurley, outfield, and Tanner Schobel, shortstop. So
Yeah.
we're talking 9 guys, right? And 4 of them are Hokies in a 14-team
Yeah,
league.
I think this is, I believe Scovan tweeted on the baseball account, this is the first time since 2003. So Tech wasn't, it's the first time since Tech has joined the ACC that Virginia Tech has had 4 first-team all-ACC baseball players.
It doesn't happen for very many teams. I mean, I can tell you
Yeah.
that. I mean,
And all ACC second team was Cade Hunter at catcher.
and you could make a stronger argument for first team for him. So he's going to be drafted probably in the top 5 rounds. Schobel will too, most likely. So it's just a lot of talent there.
third team is Nick Bitterson in the outfield and Griffin Green as a starting pitcher. So-
2 other potential pro prospects.
Right.
Oh, no doubt about that. And I think Griffin is somebody that, like, Drew has been phenomenal, right? Again, the best ERA in the ACC, 10 wins. But Griffin Green, to be the Friday guy to win 7 games, a sub-3 ERA, I go back to his UVA start. He went 7 innings, gave up 1 run on the road at UVA in an
That was
opener.
huge.
I mean, he's been money this year. What a great 1-2 punch it's been of Green and Hackenberg.
Yeah. And then the all ACC freshman team, Carson DiMartini at third base and Drew Hackenberg again at pitcher. So kudos to those guys, all well deserved. And this is just a lot of fun having, 2 good teams in softball and baseball. So Tech will face Clemson May 26th at 7 p.m. That is Thursday.
yeah.
Right. So Thursday night at 7 p.m. And then Friday night at 7 p.m. North Carolina.
Yep.
And did you say all this is on RSN?
No, I don't know that for
yes,
sure.
I was texted that the pool plays on RSN and the semifinals are on ACC Network.
So
and
I gotta go to the
the
bar on
finals
Thursday
ESPN 2.
Or you can listen in, Chris. I'd love to have you listen.
Yeah, you
in,
can-
Come on.
I-
101.7.
He paints a picture,
That's true.
I'm just saying. Again, not to give a plug. Hokie Sports app, listen for free. Would love to have you.
So, by the way, the rumor is for the regional hosting. I can't remember who told me this rumor, but bleachers down the first base line.
That's what we've heard.
Capacity.
That's what someone told me. They're going to add additional seating in the patio area. I can't exactly picture it in my head, but you're talking about a potential capacity for regionals of 6,500.
Well, I just want to bring up.
I don't know it for a fact.
Chris, did you happen to get out to the Miami series at all this year?
No.
So I don't know if you guys did either. That was the Hokie High weekend at home spring game.
Yeah, spring game.
Yeah.
And that was the largest crowd ever for a regular season Virginia Tech baseball game that Friday.
It was like 3,500, I think.
And Coach Sheff looked at me and he said, "Listen, I felt like I was at a concert when I went out to make a pitching change. I mean, that was a direct quote. And that crowd was unbelievable. That was 3,500. Connecticut, that opened the 2013 regional, there were over 5,000 fans there.
I looked it up and I thought it was 3,600.
I'm so sorry. The Yankees game was 5,000. I
okay, right,
apologize.
right.
So if you get,
But
if it was that same amount of crowd, 4,000. I mean, I'm telling you, that crowd was unbelievable. And I believe that crowds play a part in momentum personally. And we saw it firsthand yesterday. And I mean, that English field's going to be rocking. I mean, that is going to be a really, really cool scene.
The last time Tech hosted, they had to haul in a temporary
the
press
trailers
box.
for a press box.
Yeah,
and-
exactly. And the new stadium had not been built, and it was still a good crowd, but it's going to be much better this time around.
Yeah. This is great stuff. English Field is ready for it this time, and really wasn't ready last time.
And the good thing is, like, Tech by the time that regional happens, Tech will have hosted regionals for softball and super regionals for softball. So they'll be able to learn from their experiences doing that, maybe come up with some new ideas.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I think the tailgating should be great. Like, I always tailgate
in the cage.
The cage a lot,
that's where I tailgate for football.
Ah.
And it's so, I'm getting some ideas in my head.
And maybe they'll get a volume discount on the temporary bleachers, right?
Or they can just move them from softball over to baseball because
right.
supers will be done. You could theoretically take those exact
And you know
also
what?
had that
Baseball could be that would be the first weekend in June. Baseball will be hosting a regional, potentially at the same time the
Women's
softball
College
team
World
is in the
Series.
Women's College World Series in Oklahoma City.
This is just a blast.
What a weekend that would be.
Yeah. All right, Evan, thanks for coming in, buddy. Is
Yeah.
there anything you want to add?
No, just great to be back with you guys, and I love listening along. And shout out to Jake and to Katie and Gio and D Cunna. I mean, just love the job that you guys are doing. I was telling you the other day. I mean, just all the written content, everything. I still have my subscription. Thank you, Will, so I can still read everything. And I mean, from all the sports, I think that this will go down as one of the best years in Olympic sports history.
Maybe the best
of
year
Virginia
ever.
Tech. And
It's no question.
Well,
It's gonna be our
everything but
best
football.
Directors Cup.
Men's basketball wins the ACC tournament. And
just
Women's
so much
basketball.
good.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which, by the way,
And I was about to say, this is like what a year for Evan Hughes, man.
no, don't bring that
Women's
up. I mean,
basketball
listen.
and baseball.
As soon as they hire Evan Hughes, they start winning.
I just
all
mean
these
like how
sports.
lucky you are to be a part.
And how about
a
this
part of
women's?
that.
I mean, Ashley Owusu, two-time All-American, transferring into Tech women's basketball.
Yeah.
Taylor Soule, who was an All-ACC second-team player, Boston College. Starting five of potentially Amor, Owusu, Soule, King, and Kitley.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to have two All-Americans on the floor together. Women's basketball is going to be, and we're not even talking about all the other sports, but gosh,
you talk
future's
about
bright.
a guy who's mining the transfer portal. That's a good job.
I wrote an
by
article
Kenny
on
Brooks. That's right.
And we get to talk to Kenny Brooks tomorrow. Actually,
That's right.
10 a.m.
Thank you guys for having me, though. Appreciate it, and hope to do it again soon. And all the TSLers out there, hope all is well, and hopefully you guys can come out to English Field for what's going to be, as Coach Jeff says, you guys make an impact at those games. And to echo his sentiment, I mean, home field advantage matters, as we saw this weekend, and buckle up. It's going to be a fun next month, no doubt.
It is. So last thing, I realized I got my foot on the table, which my wife hates when she watches our podcast. But how did I do as a host?
Oh my gosh. Seriously, well, you used to type up word for word your intros. You came in here and don't tell me you did.
Well,
but
it's
just
not,
bullet
it's not word
points.
for word. Though.
Yeah,
Come on,
bullet points, though.
I remember the first time I went home for winter break junior year, and I was watching, and you had it typed up,
and I'm reading.
and you're doing a phenomenal job. I'm just honored to be on this. Can we close with CC just sitting back in this chair real quick, D-Con, and just like,
You want to?
can we just like have a moment of just like the old,
Somebody take a picture.
yeah, I mean, just a quick, not to knock out D-Con.
So listen, I figure if Joe Rogan can host a podcast stoned without notes, I can do it sober. So.
Yeah.
Chris is in his rightful red shirt chair.
Yes.
I feel tempted to ask Chris, how your weekends were, red shirting,
So here's a challenge for you. Can you still do the sponsor read? The latest Texas Online podcast is brought to you by the Southeast Regional Training Center.
Yep,
Well, you used to do Fisher Law Firm.
I did, yeah, and I forgot the number. I can't do that.
Hey, have you guys got a few more minutes to drag this out? Because I forgot I wanted to talk to you about your most memorable TSL podcasts.
Wow. Yeah, no, I mean, I know you guys have worked.
I got a few more
here.
minutes.
Yeah. Most memorable. Well, first, the Olympic hopefuls, which, by the way, you should go to southeastrtc.com because, that's, did I get it right? Right now,
Yeah, sure.
Southeast Regional Training Center.
SoutheastRTC.com.
Yes, there you go. Coach Roby and everybody over there. I love those peeps. They're great to me. But most memorable podcast. I remember when we brought Mackay in to the old little
When
studio.
we were sitting around the table.
Yep,
Yeah.
right after his first national championship and the excitement around that. That was a really exciting one. To have him in 48 hours removed from winning a national championship, that was certainly a memorable one. I think, I'm trying to think back to.
Well, the one you would have remembered the most, except I kicked you over into the fourth chair, was when Fuente came in.
That's a great point. And that was kind of a cool way for me to go out to see that. That was such a big deal to have coach on and have him here. That was a very memorable one, and getting to talk to him about Sam Rogers, and someone who I think just epitomizes being a Hokie. But I mean, honestly, my favorite ones are just when you didn't know where the conversation was going. We might be talking about Chris's Packers or the good luck that he's had, or always the first 10 minutes of the podcast for me are always like the fun parts where we could just be talking about anything. But I think too, just getting to know you guys, and you guys, becoming lifelong friends and being at my grad party last year, and it was so fun. Like just getting into a routine of recapping the football game on a Monday, previewing it later. I feel like my football knowledge grew so much. I mean, just Pro Football Focus numbers and all the great stuff from Chris. I mean, but it was a blast.
I feel like you really set the tone as a host, and I think Jake has carried that on, and so I really appreciate everything you did for us. So when people recognize you, do they still mention at this point? Really?
TSL, absolutely, the podcast. And I always say, I mean, no, I'm lucky because I feel like it was my way of introducing myself to Hokie Nation. And, one of the coolest thing was I wrote a post after my last podcast and put it out there, and just seeing the incredibly kind, comments that people had, but not just for what you guys are doing. I mean, one of my other favorite parts, I never forget, I was at one of my parents' camps in late July, and Will sends me a picture at 11 o'clock on a Friday, and it's just this set. No conversation about, hey, we're going to build this awesome new set. It's just, here's the podcast set. And I was like, oh my God.
Yeah, so what Evan is talking about is when we first constructed the set, I didn't tell him. It was summertime, so you weren't around.
I was coming back in a week.
I didn't tell him we were doing it, and I just sent him a picture when it was done. And because I know how you are, man. I almost made you walk in the door without even knowing it was coming.
Well, then floored.
Yeah, but it's funny. If you go back and look at that first podcast, it's kind of, the set's pretty cringy.
I was so excited because I grew up reading your work, and I remember oh my gosh, when I got that follow back from you guys on Twitter, I felt like I made it in life. But I remember distinct when you where I was. It was the last week of freshman year during finals, and I heard you guys were looking for a podcast host, and I was like, I got to do this. I got to do what. And I remember being on the phone with you guys when I was in Minnesota my first summer. And Evan, we're just going to verbalize a contract over the phone here. I was like, verbal, a contract? I have made it in life. And it was initially to do podcast and wrestling stuff. And then I also remember when we first did Facebook Live, I was like, Will, we're going to put a phone at the end of the table. What do you think? Log in text sideline. And no mics mic'd up. It's just going to pick up the natural sound of us talking
to the phone
and we should have questions. And so I'm just... Congrats to you guys on everything, and this is amazing, and the job that Malcolm's done too. I mean, just honored to come back. I was really excited waking up this morning saying I was glad I could sit in the chair too. So
the chairs need to be replaced, man. They're pretty horrible. It's interesting because when Chef came in, he sat in this chair, and you don't realize how slouchy you look sitting in these chairs.
Oh yeah, no.
And Chef in particular looked like he was slouching way down. I felt bad for not telling him, hey, coach, And if you see Katie host a podcast, Katie sits bolt upright. And nobody else that hosts a podcast sits bolt upright. So these chairs need to be replaced. I've been watching some shows, and
we all grew up playing video games, so slouching is natural for us. Guessing Katie,
I swear that's where I
got
it
when she was growing up.
I grew up sitting on my spine, doing stuff.
Do you know how many times I get texts from my mom during these podcasts as a kid, your posture's bad, or did you not put gel in your hair this morning? Or, I mean, gosh, it felt like I was getting every day my wardrobe. Are your socks matching? I mean,
Well, it's so weird to have people
Thanks, YouTube Live.
People commenting on what you're wearing.
They are matching today. I want the record to show they are. We stepped up. Yeah.
Wait till you get to be my age and you watch one of the podcasts that's 2 years old and you're like, wow, I looked a lot younger back then. What is happening to me? So I may have to phase myself out here soon.
But great memories. And it was fun. It just felt like we got into a rhythm. It was fun getting to know, still am, but getting to know you guys in the middle of podcasts, right? We got into a routine of knowing when you want to jump in, body mannerisms or the quick little, it was fun. We were dialed in.
They also shelled you over your favorite TV, the TV, TV and movies you've never seen.
I know you got to run. We talk about, but I do want to bring this up. So I went on ESPN Blacksburg 2 months ago, and Paul Van Wagner asked me if I've said just a bit outside on the air this year. And I said no because I know the reference, but I haven't seen the movie, and I want to make sure I get it right.
If go ahead. Sorry.
And Clark Ruland just decides to tweet out, Evan Hughes has not seen Major League. And I counted, I had 52 different people tweet at me. And I'm talking like some were legitimately mad.
You got
that
ratioed.
I got ratioed hard.
I figured for Bill Roth's program, that would be like the #1 requirement.
So I texted these guys, because remember, for those that are lifelong TSLs, when I hadn't seen Office Space, you would have thought I'd committed a crime. We had Bitter on the podcast. Even Bitter at that point was like, how have you not seen that? So I just want the record to show. I have seen Major League. I give it a 9 out of 10. Office Space, it's still too dry for me. It was fine. I know the pieces of flair. I get the reference now, and I've got that down. But I still have yet to see Field of Dreams. I'm sorry, Bull Durham.
Oh, man.
And there are a lot of more baseball movies that I have left to go.
That's
so
amazing.
I will conference with you.
I'm amazed that like nobody, being the sports guy that you are, you've never saw any.
Well, it's not just that, but and I think I'm half serious when I say this. If you're teaching broadcasting and you are teaching, one of the things you're teaching is calling baseball games, developing talent that can call baseball games, you do need to make sure that they see
absolutely.
Bull Durham and Major League and all those sorts of movies.
But I appreciated the mentions. And by the way, it's all good fun, Hokie fans. But I mean, this was during the ACC women's basketball tournament. We had just beaten North Carolina, and I was still getting tweets. How have you not seen Major League? And the best is like you guys got involved. Anyway, so I want the record to show. Thank you guys for showing me the movies, and maybe we can keep this going. What I need.
So now
to see,
you understand why for big football games I bring the Joe Boo doll to the tailgate and put a rum and a cigar out there.
So that was my favorite part about watching Major League. I remember you brought this up on a podcast that you would. What's it called again?
Joe Boo.
You would ball, and I was like, "What in the world?" Like, I just didn't understand. It's one of those moments as a podcast you kind of nod your head, yeah,
See,
act all engaged, and you'll know what's going on. And then I watch the movie, I go, Chris Coleman, I've got it now.
Some of my friends actually got that for me as a gift. That's how I got it, and it comes with a fake cigar.
Yeah,
but it broke off, so I had to go get him a real one for the tailgates this past year. But yeah, it's pretty good times to take him out there. People see it, and it takes them a second to realize who it is. But
that's it. Oh man.
Well, never stop learning, Evan.
Never stop learning.
Evan, I've got a question for you. Do you have what is, if you had to pick one, do you have a favorite call from this year? And if you don't have a favorite call, what is the favorite Virginia Tech sports moment this year you've gotten to experience?
Well, I mean, I feel like, I mean, to call the first ever series win in Charlottesville for Tech baseball since they've joined the ACC, that felt, I mean, if Ryan Zimmerman Day that Saturday, 5,000, 6,000, 7,000 UVA fans, that was, but for me, it'll be the, I think, well, I mean, this past weekend, right? Like, I don't want to say recently, but it's like getting to call an ACC regular season title for Tech baseball. That was exciting. But I think in the game for me was that North Carolina quarterfinal game. You know, you're in Greensboro, you lose Kayla King, your best defender the day before. Kitley leaves in the first quarter, and you're going up against the 16th ranked team in the country, down your ACC player of the year, your best starter, and you come back and win that game, and Georgia has that layup with two. I mean, to me, that was one of the, I wish that game was at Castle, because I think even more Tech fans would have been like, yeah, that's one of the moments of the year, because it was just, I mean, for them to hit the 3 then at the buzzer, but then go to overtime and win. I mean, Coach says that's his favorite one he's had since being the head coach of the Hokies, and I can't fault him.
Certainly
for
the
that
most improbable considering who was not on the court.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one that'll always resonate with. But I think moving forward to, like, to call a regional, like if Tech were to win a regional, super. Get to Oklahoma. I mean, to Omaha. I feel privileged and honored that I get to be the voice that's documenting these 2 amazing seasons that are going on right now.
So we hired David last fall, and he gets to go up to New York and see Virginia Tech win ACC basketball.
Yeah, I brought the confetti back there on the table.
Right. That's
awesome. I was in, like, Evan and I. What a year for us! We literally just over a year ago, Evan and I were graduates, and now. You know, he's gotten to call some games. I've gotten to call some games.
So David gets back from New York, and I'm like, it's all downhill from here, right?
Well, apparently not.
Apparently not. Yeah. All right. Well, appreciate you coming on, man.
Thank you.
Folks, thanks for listening for almost 2 hours. Well, once Malcolm takes the breaks out, it'll be more like an hour and 40 minutes of Tech Sideline podcast number 239. And I'm not going to commit to doing one on Wednesday, but I think we may get Chip in here and preview softball. And if so, we'll see you then. Thanks for listening.